Hi, everyone. I want to welcome everyone to another, it's actually our sixth season of the ALKtALK webinars and also our Healing Arts calendar. Please stay muted for those who just joined us. And I want to go ahead and say that there's closed caption on the bottom of your toolbar under More. And if you hit closed caption, if English isn't your first language, you could follow along also. And I also want to thank the summit committee and all the people who were involved in the summit. We had an unbelievable summit for those who were there or virtual. And for those who came, and I was there, I was fortunate enough to be in San Diego, hugging an Elkie, hugging a fellow member of our tribe is pretty unbelievable. It's a great experience. And I just want to thank everyone for coming, especially Dr. Lovely and the other doctors who flew into town. Dr. Lovely joined us back in January of 2021. She was one of our first doctors to speak on ALKtALK. And ALKtALK was set up to be like a webinar of information and knowledge to pass along the world. And we've been so fortunate. I think we're over 70 of them so far. And you can always view them on YouTube. I started looking back in 2021 and realized how much we've gone forward in medicines and techniques and how we sequence drugs, etc. So it's kind of interesting. And I know we have a long way to go. So I just want to tell everyone that. And then also our full calendar of healing arts programs can be found on ALKpositive.org. On the top of the page, Living with ALK Positive, and click on Healing Arts. I'm going to go and start pulling. What were you diagnosed? A lot of answers here, so I'm sure we're going to get a variety of people that showing up. Okay. I feel like that's Jeopardy. Here we go. Go ahead, Summer.
Okay, when were you diagnosed? 14% of you just in the past year. This might be your very first ALKtALK. So thank you for joining us. I'm so sorry that you are here, but I'm so glad that you found us. 8% of you were diagnosed in the past 1 to 2 years. 13% of you were diagnosed 2 to 3 years ago. 22% of you were diagnosed 3 to 4 years ago. 13% of you were diagnosed 4 to 5 years ago. 11% of you were 5 to 6 years ago. That's me. I didn't get to complete it. 5% of you were diagnosed 6 to 7 years ago. 8% of you 7 to 8 years ago. 3% of you 8 to 9 years ago. This is so hopeful. And 3% of you 10 or more years ago. And Mark is in there too and didn't get to.
Yes, I am. All right. Have you progressed? Yes or no? And if you progressed, multiple choice, where was your progression?
It's so great to see all of those no's, although they're shrinking. But again, why we have these ALK talks, if you're stage 4, you know that it's not if you progress, but when, and nothing better than being prepared and having a plan in place. So whether you're watching the recording or here with us live, it's awesome that you're here for this. Okay, so 35% of you have unfortunately experienced progression and 65% of you have not. That is awesome. Okay, and where 39% of you progressed in your lungs, 43% in your brain. We will have a brain metastasis and leptomeningeal talk coming up, I believe, in the new year. 43% of you are in the brain, 4% of you progressed in your bones, 22% of you in your lymph nodes, 13% of you with a pleural effusion, 4% of you progressed with pericardial fluid, 4% in your liver, and 17% other. Thank you for sharing that with us.
What's your current treatment that you're on?
Okay, what is your current treatment? We don't have anyone here on a first generation TKI, not with us this evening. 3% of you are on brigatinib, plus me. 56% of you are on alectinib. 35% of you are on lorlatinib. 7% of you are doing chemo with a TKI. Nobody on straight chemo, nobody yet on the gilteritinib trial. 3% of you, plus Mark, on NVL 655 or neladalkib. 1% of you are on another clinical trial.
Our last question.
Dun, dun, dun. Did you attend the ALK Summit? Sure thing, I was there in person. Yes, I attended virtually. No, but I've watched the recordings. No, but I want to watch the recordings. Wait, what's the ALK Summit? Exactly. Wait, what? Okay, good. So it's good news, everybody. There's no one that said I didn't know there was an ALK Summit. So we did well with the marketing of that. And all of you in sharing your summit experiences. So woo! Okay, 34% of you were there in person. How awesome is that? I needed about
For some reason, you muted yourself. That could have been your husband, Jeffy, muted you. I don't know, but you should unmute. Summer, you're muted.
Oh my gosh, I'm
Okay.
saying really funny things too.
Okay.
Okay, teasing. Anyway, okay, so 34% of you were there in person. 40% of you attended virtually. There, or some maybe somebody muted me. 13% of you watched the recordings. 13% of you still want to watch the recordings, which hey, they're there. That's what they're there for. And I'm so happy that nobody here, everybody here knew there was a summit. They just haven't yet maybe watched. So that's awesome. And we will soon be announcing next year's location. We had hoped to on Sunday of the summit, but ran into a couple kinks and are back to the drawing board. But we'll be coming in hot, I would say, within a month. Within the next month, we'll be locking down the date and the location. So we can't wait to share that with you.
It was interesting enough on the polling questions that as I was going through the old videos, the lorlatinib is really increased in percentage wise, and the brain metastasis, which kind of surprised me how high that was. So maybe Dr. Lovely at one point could talk about that a little bit. But I wanted to say in good news that my friend Summer Farman is our new vice president. So
Not yet.
a couple days if you don't turn it down. So congratulations. I'll pass it to you. Go ahead, Summer.
Oh, thank you. Well, it is so great to see all of you back with us for season 6. ALK Talk first, Mark and Gina. Mark had his brainchild, and along with our beloved late Gina Hollenbach, brought ALKtALK to life. It was, in the midst of COVID, we were all further apart than ever, and they had this idea to bring experts right to your living room. And so I was just diagnosed a few months when I saw my first ALKtALK in, I think, November of 2020, and thought that it had been going on forever. Fun story, I actually saw Mark telling a patient, I'm going to have to mute you if you don't mute yourself. And I looked at my daughter and was like, who is this guy? Um, but he brought information to all of us, became one of my dearest friends. And I'm so, so fortunate. And Dr. Lovely joined us in 2021 on ALK Talk, and it's been a while. We were just saying we can't even believe that that much time has gone by, but we have had the privilege of having her at our summits, and then also working for us behind the scene in our Second Opinions program and serving on our scientific advisory board. So we are lucky to be in contact with her regularly, and are so happy to have you with us tonight, Dr. Lovely.
Thank you so much for having me, Summer.
Okay, so you are coming from Nashville right now, right? Zooming in.
Yes. So, hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me tonight. Welcome to my home. So, I probably often see me in my work clothes and in my office or with my lung Zoom background. This is my house. I'm very happy to be here tonight. I was rounding earlier today at the VA hospital, and now I'm very happy to have a peaceful night at home and to spend some time with you all. I also have my little flower, so I am extremely sentimental. And so things that people give me, even if they're like, my mom used to be like, throw that away. And I'm like, no, I'm holding on to it. And so because you brought up Gina, Gina one time gave me, and I'm also a huge crier, so you're
Oh,
gonna have to all forgive me for that. But Gina one time brought me like Diet Coke in my office, but these like really cute little glass Diet Coke bottles. And this was when she was well, and I just loved her so much, and I loved the Diet Coke bottle. So I wanted to share with you one of the little Gina Diet Coke bottles that I still
oh,
have around my house with some little flowers in them, and I just love
I
that so
love
much.
that.
So please know that when you give your provider, I hate the word provider, but when you give your physician something, even if it's not the person who's directly caring for you, it means so much to us. And sorry, I'm like such, you will see tears from me all the time. And I'm going to lead with that right away because I am not scared to show you who I am. So welcome to my home. Looking forward to a great discussion tonight. I will also say, totally meant to be informal. That's why you're seeing in my house. That's why you're seeing me without my work clothes on. And I did not prepare any slides because I don't want to lecture at you. We've been sitting and having lectures all summer long, and that's amazing. And the summit was amazing. I just came back from World Lung. It was amazing. But sometimes there's too many meetings, and sometimes just having the chance to chat and connect is much more powerful than looking at slides and looking at data. And so I want this to be an opportunity for us to connect, to be able to ask questions. I will answer everything that I can to the limit that I can answer it, and be totally honest with you in about anything that you want to hear about, what I'm excited about, what I'm nervous about, want to hear what you guys are excited about, what you all are nervous about. We have 45 minutes. Let's dig in.
Well, we so appreciate that. Like, thank you for keeping it real with us. Thank you for showing us, a little peek into your life. And that is why we adore you, is for you being yourself. So thank you so much. And there was already a comment saying the exact same thing. So thank you. Um, well, tell us about, let's just get right into it. Tell us about your new adventure, um, your new
Oh, we're
promotion.
going right there.
Yeah,
Yes.
like we're just
Okay.
gonna go right there. Like we had people crying in the support groups, but also cheering. So tell us, because I know that's what everybody wants to know right off the bat.
Okay, so I'm gonna cry even more because so sorry everyone. Like you know. Um yeah, so I'm moving to California. So let me start by saying I am from New York. And I am not married and I have no children. And my entire family is in New York, including both of my parents, who are both have active cancer. And
Oh,
I have lived in Nashville for 19 and a half years. So, like, my roots here are so strong. And so, when I tell you that this decision to move is a difficult one, it really is because it moves me way further away from my family and it moves me way far away from the family that I know now, which is my Nashville community that I love. So why am I doing this? Because I have such an intense desire to continue to grow my career and contribute to the lung cancer community. And the way that I can do that best right now is by taking this new job. And so my desire to be like, I want to continue to do the best that I can for lung cancer exceeds my desire to be comfortable
yeah.
in my home in Nashville. It exceeds my desire to be near my mom and dad. I really want to do well by my patients and by this community. And so my new position is way far away in California. I've never lived in California. I'm only going to have a good narrative about it. I believe that you manifest joy in your life, and it is your job to create joy around you. And so I'm going to do that, and I'm going to go there, and I'm going to give it 110%. And you all are welcome to come and visit me. It is a beautiful place. Nashville is also a beautiful place. New York is also a beautiful place. Like, you have to find beauty in where you are. But I'm going to be the division chief for City of Hope, which is a cancer center in Southern California. They have 30 something clinics in Southern California, and then they also have sites in Chicago, Atlanta, and Phoenix. And so I will be based in Southern California. I'm super excited to have a position that continues to elevate my career in the lung cancer community. It is not a decision that came lightly, but it is all about how can I continue to contribute to this community that I just love so much.
Wow, that gives me chills, and I'm sure the rest of the community zooming in or watching this recording, because that I can't even imagine the position you're in, but you're just a flight away. So um I'm like, let me hug you because I can't imagine the weight of that decision. But we are all so grateful that you're forging ahead and moving mountains, because we know that you do that for the lung cancer community. So thank you so much. And of course, what I asked you right away was, well, wait, are you still seeing patients?
Of course, absolutely. Like I will be very honest with you all. Like there are lots of opportunities for people like me who walk in both worlds of, I run a research laboratory and I see patients. Um, you know, it's not in my cards right now to go work for pharma, and that's not because
Mhm.
pharma's not amazing. I just am not ready to give up patient care. I really love the interactions that I have with people. I think that I'm a people person. I like to connect with people.
Mhm.
It's such an amazing time in lung cancer across the board. I also don't want a position that's going to take me away from lung cancer. And so this really is such a great role for me to be in. So yes, I will have a clinical presence. I will have a research presence. I will have an operational presence. And how do we, standardize lung cancer care across the network? So I'm super excited. I mean, it's going to be a huge move, but please, please, please come visit me. If you like soccer, the World Cup is going to be in LA. If you like the Olympics, God willing, in 2028, we'll all be able to watch the Olympics in LA. So again, like I want to only have a positive narrative about this.
Absolutely. And it's so deserve. You're so deserving of this role, and how fortunate the colleagues that you'll be overseeing. And this is amazing. So thank you for your leadership, the guidance of your patients, and then the leadership of your colleagues. So thank you. Okay, so there's been all of these meetings right now. Like you said, you just got back from the World Congress on Lung Cancer. And then I know there's more conferences ahead. Um, Anything that you're super excited about that you want to talk about, or share with us?
Yeah, so I mean, there wasn't a lot about ALK at
Great.
World Lung, but I think the biggest thing that came out of World Lung from my perspective that I think is relevant to this community is a study called Flora 2, which was the EGFR TKI, osimertinib, which is our current standard of care for EGFR mutant lung cancer with chemotherapy. And, as we think about this field, and let me take a step back. People often compare EGFR and ALK because they're the closest possible analogy, but they're actually really different. We have to make some cross comparisons, and the reason we make a cross comparison is because EGFR was discovered first, and we've known about it for longer, and it tends to be never smokers. But that's honestly kind of where the similarities end. But we learn and we pull pieces of information from other types of lung cancer to help us think about and shape the way we treat, in this case, ALK-positive lung cancer. So where is the field for EGFR at right now? Well, if we think about, for patients with ALK-positive lung cancer, you're diagnosed and you start on a pill medicine, which probably everyone on this call, is familiar with. The pills are called tyrosine kinase inhibitors, or TKIs. What do those do in the first place? And hopefully you all have some understanding of this, but ALK is like an engine. It has an engine function, and that engine is putting, the acceleration on the tumor. What the drug does is turn the engine off. That's what it does. There are other engines in lung cancer, and EGFR is one of those other engines. And there is drugs against EGFR, and there's actually not as many drugs against EGFR as there are against ALK. The current drug is a drug called osimertinib, or Tagrisso. And where this field is there's three different choices if you're first diagnosed with EGFR mutant lung cancer. There's the pill osimertinib, also called Tagrisso. And then there's 2 combination therapies. There's Tagrisso plus chemotherapy, and there's a combination called amivantamab plus lazertinib. These drugs all have terrible names that nobody can spell and nobody can pronounce. So amivantamab is an antibody that binds EGFR on one arm and a different protein called MET, which you probably all have heard about, in a different arm. So these 3 regimens come with very different side effects, very different time side effects for patients in terms of how much they're having to go to infusion room. And there's controversy around, well, what's the best? And where we sit, usually, and I will tell you, I very strongly believe this, your first shot on goal when you're treating a cancer has got to be your strongest. When
Totally.
you're first diagnosed and you get a treatment, I'm of the strong opinion your first shot on goal has got to be the strongest. Why do I say that? Because you want to kill as much of that tumor as you possibly can right away before it starts to diversify and figure out ways to get around the tumor, get around the drug. Cancer has one simple goal. It wants to grow. And so you just want to throw the kitchen sink at it, basically, not literally, but metaphorically, to kill it. And so at World Lung, there was survival results for Tagrisso, the EGFR pill plus chemotherapy, and it beat the pill alone. But it's still not as good as lorlatinib in the first line. And so that's why I come back to, it's not, EGFR and ALK are not exactly the same.
So you don't see necessarily, or maybe, what do you think? Will providers, or will there be a study start doing upfront chemotherapy?
Frankly, no, not for all comers for ALK, because the progression-free survival, or the time that from when a patient starts on lorlatinib to the time that the cancer progresses, if you look at the study called CROWN, is more than 5 years. That is mind-blowing.
Right.
Okay, now it's never good enough. We wish it was 10 or 20 or 30, or it was a cure. But 5 years on one drug in lung cancer is absolutely, absolutely magical in terms of where the field has been.
For
So
sure.
I cannot emphasize that enough. Like, magical. I mean, when you think about crizotinib, about a year, and now all of a sudden we're talking about more than 5 years, that's why we need science, right? Because that's what drives better therapies. It's really hard to design a clinical trial where your control arm, in this case, the lorlatinib, has such a long response. And frankly, a lot of drug companies are not going to want to do that.
Now, but how about, we saw in the opening poll with the 55% of people that are on alectinib right now. So for those, and would it still have to be trial driven? I'm totally, playing naive here. Or
Yeah.
would they perhaps do a chemo reset or something like that?
Yeah. I mean, so we can frankly, there's a lot of challenges that we have in the US healthcare system right now, and we should dig into that a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
But one thing we can do that they don't have as much flexibility in other countries to do is administer FDA-approved drugs, what we call off-label. And so have I given an ALK TKI and chemo before? Absolutely. Because in some cases, if there's progression, or if I think the patient is high risk, and I'd like to come back to this high risk, then I feel that it is safe to give an ALK TKI plus chemotherapy, and the specific chemotherapy is something called carboplatin and pemetrexed. But that, I want to emphasize, that is not based on clinical trial data. So from the poll you see that some people are getting chemo, but the combination of ALK TKI plus chemo is not based on a clinical trial the way that this FLAURA2, which is the EGFR drug plus chemo, is. Where I think that chemo may play a role, and what I'm really excited about for the future is, let's paint a scenario for a second. If I have 10 patients in my clinic and they all are new diagnosis of ALK-positive lung cancer, and I start all 10 of them on lorlatinib, I have no way to know who is going to have 5 years on the drug, who is going to have 10 years on the drug, who's going to have 3 years on the drug, who's going to have 2 years on the drug. That is really unsatisfying, really unsatisfying. Most of all to patients, because we don't have predictive power. It's unsatisfying to us as physicians because we don't like this kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop
Right.
stinks. I could use a different word, but I won't. It stinks, right? You're always like, is it going to be okay? Is it, what if we had a measurable, a quantitative way to say, you're going to be on the drug for 5 years and you're going to be on the drug for 3 years. And because you're not going to get as much benefit, I'm going to intensify your treatment.
Right.
That would be great. And so to me, where the next wave of impact is going to be for ALK is not a new ALK drug. We have really strong ALK drugs. The next wave of impact is going to be how do we, in a dynamic way, everybody gets started on the pill, but not everybody's going to get the same duration of benefit. How do we intensify treatment for those patients who are at higher risk? And how do we even define higher risk? Is it ctDNA? Is it scans? Is it molecular properties? Is it an integration of all those things together? I'm of the opinion that it's probably an integration of all of those things together.
Which again, why the science is critical.
Absolutely.
Ken, did you want to jump in and say something?
So Christine, on that lovely, by the way, thank you so much for being on with us tonight. One of the reasons why we ALK-positive invested in the Breakthrough Cancer Project, pledging $2 million over 4 years, is to address those questions you brought up. Could you say something about the progress that's being made there around scans and other things that you'd like the community to know?
Yeah. So let me take a step back and say, maybe not everyone is familiar with Breakthrough Cancer. So Breakthrough Cancer is an organization that is funded or was started by a family who very generously gave a donation to this scientist named Tyler Jacks. And Tyler Jacks is like top of the echelon PhD scientist in the Harvard MIT system, like brilliant, brilliant, brilliant cancer researcher. Breakthrough Cancer has made multiple what they call team labs where they're tackling difficult cancers. And for example, they have a pancreas cancer project. They have an ovarian cancer project. They have now a lung cancer project. And that lung cancer project, the paradigm for the lung cancer project is ALK-positive lung cancer, which is amazing. And so I will articulate this breakthrough cancer in two ways because I think in so many ways it's amazing. First, it crowdsources the most unbelievable people you can imagine. Like there are 9 institutions working on this. 7 of them are direct patient facing, and they're like all the people that you hope are thinking about ALK-positive lung cancer. And like when I tell you that we are friends, we truly are. Like especially like Vincent Lamb and I, who are like sort of like, the shepherds of the flock right now, speak every single day. And
Amazing.
same thing, Jess, Alice, Mark, like we truly are friends. Like these are my people, right? And so it's amazing to be able to work on a project that you love with the people that you love. And so that also, I think fuels the, hey, we're going to get this done because we're accountable to you all and we're accountable to each other. And we want to be part of it because it's like, hey, we want to be part of this club and we want to do great work and we're going to make this happen. So that's kind of the team. And the institutions are Mass General. So it's like Jess Lynn, Justin Gaynor, Aaron Hatta, Dana Farber, so Alice Shaw, MSK, Marco Wad, Alex Drillin, Johns Hopkins, Vincent Lamb, Elsa Agnastu, myself at Vanderbilt, MD Anderson, John Haymack, Simon Hickey, who's the ctDNA expert at MD Anderson, University of Colorado. Aaron Schenk is the kind of lead at at University of Colorado, but of course, the whole University of Colorado team has a role. The Koch Institute, which is the scientific part of MIT, and this brilliant scientist named Chris Love, and I'm forgetting one. New York, Hopkins. Who am I missing? I'm missing one organization because there's 9. But so a good thing about me moving to California is that now I'll be a site in California. So that will be easier for patients to access when they're, on the West Coast. So the project itself is really based on something that everyone on this call has experience with. So here's a scenario, and I'm going to frame it in ALK-positive lung cancer, but this is true for every single type of literally every single type of lung cancer. You have stage 4 lung cancer. We treat you with a drug. Maybe it's an ALK drug. Maybe it's an EGFR drug. Maybe it's a KRAS drug. Maybe it's immunotherapy. Maybe it's chemotherapy. Maybe it's a combination of all of these. We give the drug, we get a scan, and we say, hooray, the tumor shrunk by 70%. Should we be saying hooray? Or should we be saying, what's still there? Because it's great that the tumor shrinks with treatment, but there's something that's still visible on the scan. What is that? Everyone has that experience. If you have scans, you have probably tumor or something that's still there, unless you're early stage disease and it's all been surgically removed. If you have stage 4 disease, it's very, very, very rare to be no evidence of disease. And so we give these drugs to shrink the tumor, but then there's still something visible. And what we collectively want to know is like, what is this, what we call residual disease, where the drug has worked, but there's still something on the scans. And we want to know why, what is still there. And let's frame this another way. If 100% of the tumor cells have ALK, why don't 100% of the tumor cells go away with the ALK drug? What? We don't know. It doesn't make sense, right? And so what this whole project is about is, what is this residual disease phenomenon? And it applies to every type of lung cancer. So the potential impact is huge, but we're starting with ALK as our framework. And I'll give you a very simple answer to why we don't know what's going on at this point, because the drugs are effective and we don't get biopsies at the time of maximal response. And so if you start with a tumor that's 4 centimeters and it shrinks to 1.5 centimeter, we don't, as part of standard of care, biopsy it after it's shrunk. And if we're not sampling the tumor at that time, then I cannot say what is happening at a molecular level to understand why it's still there. So this whole project is predicated on what is residual disease and how do we intervene on residual disease?
That is so interesting. I've never personally heard that perspective, but that makes so much sense. And then I guess too, are you all thinking like, do we do like some people in practice would then do local consolidative therapy, some, don't, might wait and watch, but
Yeah.
biopsy too is a whole nother perspective. That's so interesting.
Yeah, I mean, so we can't design the best interventions, and the interventions meaning drugs and even types of
Without knowing.
radiation, if you don't know what's going on, right? It's
Yeah.
kind of like you get biomarkers at diagnosis. Well, maybe you need biomarkers at residual disease also. But
Right.
what biomarkers are appropriate? Do you need DNA testing again, RNA testing, protein testing? I don't know, because we literally know nothing about it. Literally nothing, because we never actually pull the tumor at that time. And there's a question, why not biopsy the tumor at progression? We do biopsy the tumor at progression, but the tumor progression is different than the tumor at the time of residual disease. The tumor is evolving. It's like a living being. It's changing over time. It's responding to and reacting to the environment that it lives in, to the drugs that we're giving it. And so you have like a tumor at 0.1, which is your diagnostic sample before you've gotten any drug. The tumor at what I'm calling residual disease, like the best response when the tumor has shrunk the most. And then at some point in time, you have a tumor that's grown again, right? So let's say you go 4 centimeters to 1.5 centimeters now to 4.5 centimeters. We sample it at what we call acquired resistance when the tumor is resistant to the drug. So we have some idea of what's going on then, but we have no idea what's going on at that time where the tumor has shrunk, but is still present.
And does that hold the key to the question you brought up before? Like, why are there those short responders to lorlatinib? You know, if you're,
Potentially, yeah.
that's amazing.
Yes.
That is amazing. Ken, what were you
I
coming
wanted to say, so this breakthrough therapy initiative, they're raising $20 million just to focus on addressing this minimal residual disease in ALK, which is so fantastic. And it's so great that we as an organization can be a part of it and have advocates like Christine leading it. But there's one other thing on this topic, it'd be nice to know. So a year or so ago, Christine was selected to be one of the leaders in AACR, which is the American Association for Cancer Research, which, according to them, is the largest association of cancer researchers in the world, like 50,000 or whatever. And so now Christine has a high level role there. So the ALK-positive board made the decision to sponsor a research fellowship with AACR, knowing that someone like Christine would be in there to make sure that we got a good selection. So there will be, within a matter of weeks, hopefully, there'll be an announcement you'll see of the AACR ALK-positive fellowship, which will be a researcher who's now being funded to work specifically on one aspect about cancer. And I wanted, Christine, I hope you could just mention the importance of this kind of support that our patients are funding.
Yeah, I mean, hugely, 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 hugely important and on so many levels. So I'm going to kind of break this down into three things. One, what is AACR? Two, what is a fellowship for a young investigator? And three, kind of put it in the context of the current climate for research and biomedical research in the United States. So first, I'll start with huge thank you to partnering with AACR. This is another organization that I just feel so strongly about. So AACR was the first cancer research organization in the United States. It's over 100 years old, which is remarkable. Like 100 years ago, they had nothing for cancer. And so some people who were really thinking outside of the box and ahead of the curve were like, hey, this is a huge problem. We need to form a group around this. So kudos to the original organizers of the American Association for Cancer Research, who a century ago were like, we're going to predict that this is going to be a major problem for our country and our world, and we need to wrap our heads around it. So AACR is an international organization. It's actually hundreds of thousands of members worldwide. That runs many organizations and supports all types of cancer and all types of researchers. And so it's not just, and patients, it's not just lung cancer, it's any type of cancer, which I also really love too, because as deep as I love lung cancer, and I hope you know that is like, there are two things I love in life: lung cancer and dogs. Like, that's it. There you go. Now you know me. That's me in a nutshell. There are other things, but lung cancer and dogs, that's the majority of my world. And if you want to talk about dogs, I'd love to talk about dogs sometime with you, or show me your dog sometime. So AACR is something I feel really strongly about because, we have to bridge gaps between community, and we learn from each other, not just in the lung cancer organization, but we learn what they're doing in pancreas cancer, what they're doing in breast cancer, what they're doing in brain cancer. And so this is an amazing organization that has tremendous national and international reach. Tremendous. I mean, the CEO, March Foti, is like one of the most inspirational women I have ever met in my entire life. And that is saying a lot. Okay, so the fellowship capitalizes on the infrastructure that AACR has to actually give out grants and make sure that they're successful, because it's not just, hey, give the money and I'll see you later. It's the stewardship of, hey, we're giving you a grant, and we want to make sure that if you're especially a young investigator, that you have an environment and a culture to support you, so that we keep you in and support your interest in cancer research and keep you in this field, because we need a workforce for cancer research in our country. and in the entire world. And so I think the thing that's really important about this message here is it's not just, hey, we hand over the money. It's we hand over the money to an organization that then fosters the development of a young researcher to keep them interested, in this case, ALK-positive lung cancer. Young researchers, I benefited from multiple research grants when I was a young researcher, like now about 12 years ago, before I started on faculty. This is the foundation, how you get your foot in the door. And so this is like, for a young researcher who's going to get this award, career changing. That's the best way I can describe career changing. It will be their, fuel to propel them forward in the world of cancer research in a way that, and now I'm going to pivot to the third topic, that is increasingly difficult right now. It is not dramatic to say that, there are a lot of challenges to funding, and a very challenging funding climate, whatever your politics are. We're not getting into that. The reality is that 2025 has completely shaken up the landscape for biomedical research in our country. There's a lot of uncertainty going around right now in terms of, where our funding is going to land, how we're going to support it, how we're going to support current researchers, how we're going to support young researchers, what that's going to look like at the federal level. When there's less federal money for grants, then the private foundations like ALK-positive, like AACR, become even more competitive because there's more people applying for them. And so, having these additional opportunities for funding is incredibly important, but in a way that is scientifically vetted. Because we don't just, and I'll die on this hill, we don't just hand over money to people and say, you're not accountable. You are accountable for the science that you do. You are accountable to do something good for the community that you are serving.
Such a great point. Ken, go ahead.
That's beautifully said, Christine. Thank you so much. And we're really excited that we can be a part of that. And I know, Summer, you wanted to play a clip.
Oh, sure, I sure could. Except everybody, bear with me because this is not my strong suit. But yes, we did have a clip that so many of you came back from the summit. I told Dr. Lovely that she said words that we all took so to heart. Let's see, guys, if I can make it happen.
While you're working on it, I'll queue up the next. Oh, here.
Here we go. Let's see.
I will just start by saying there will be no treatments new if there are no clinical trials, period. No new treatments without clinical trials, period. So if we want new treatments, we need clinical trials. That's it. That's how we get new treatments. That's why we have first-line lorlatinib. That's why we have first-line alectinib. All of these things came from clinical trials. That's how drugs go to FDA for approval. There is an enormous number of questions here. This is such an important topic. I think it is important to know the nuts and bolts. What are
So beautifully said. So now, one of the other things that fits with this, Christine, is of course, universities doing research is essential to the success. Patients, funding, and participating in clinical trials is key to this success. But there's also this commercial piece for companies who have a role in funding and bringing drugs to market. One of the things that you've been doing for our community that I'd love you to hear more about is you've been advocating with pharma and biotechs to invest in doing trials for ALK-positive patients. And I know, you and I have spoken about a number of them, Nuvectis and others. Could you say something about that role that you've taken on?
Yeah. So, if we're going to preach precision medicine, we have to practice precision medicine, right? And so, sometimes what happens is, and for clinical trials, of which we could have a whole multiple hour talk on the pros and cons of clinical trials and the challenges. And there are, as anyone who on this call has been on a clinical trial, there are great things about it and there are challenges. One of the many challenges is that, funding on clinical trials are incredibly expensive. And sometimes there's barriers to quote niched population clinical trials. Like, a drug company may come at the perspective of, I want to be able to enroll more patients more quickly because that gets a drug to market faster, or they want a broader market, or there's a lot of reasons. But again, if we're going to preach precision medicine, if we're going to preach personalization of care, then we have to practice it, which means we need trials that are specific for ALK. We need trials that are specific for ROS1, which is even less common than ALK. We need trials that are specific for NRG fusions, like all of the subtypes of lung cancer that we have, right? They have different biologies, and they have unique properties of each of these. There are common threads because it's lung cancer, but there are differences. And so, in myself and my colleagues, when we're talking to pharma, we're not just saying, hey, just let's have a lung cancer trial. We're talking about a lung cancer trial for patients with ALK-positive lung cancer who've progressed on first-line lorlatinib. What are the areas of need, and how do we bring the most precision, like drill down to the most specific area we can to fit the needs of the community?
Thank you, Christine. We really appreciate your advocacy in so many different ways.
There are a bunch of questions in the chat.
Yes, that's exactly where I was going. Do you want
Okay.
some? Do you want us to field them?
I'm going to just start.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, at the top, just make sure that everyone thanks. So thank you everyone who submitted a question. And I'm gonna try to get through all of these. So if I go kind of quickly, the
you're the
first
best.
one, Michael. Hi, Michael. Any thoughts on the updated ivonescimab and chemo data as this potential therapy for ALK? So there will be, as I think we heard from the summit, some IVO trials in the ALK-positive patient population. It is a drug that I'm excited about. Some of the specifics on the trial design, and they're bringing this therapy more and more to America, is interesting. But ivonescimab, in terms of ivonescimab, and for those of you who, sorry, let me step back a minute. Ivonescimab is an antibody that has one arm, and antibodies look like Ys, and they have arms, just like this, just like mine I'm showing you. For ivonescimab, one arm of the antibody of the Y binds to something called PD-1, which is an immune marker. The other arm of the antibody binds something called to VEGF, which is vascular endothelial growth factor, which is actually an old target in cancer that's making a resurgence. And so this is a drug that is now being touted across multiple different types of lung cancer. The question is, what's the right setting for it? I think we're still trying to figure that out. And some of that data was presented at World Lung. I think it is an interesting opportunity to bring it into the space of ALK-positive lung cancer. Why? It is supported by some data, again, making analogy to the EGFR field. And it would be an opportunity potentially to bring immunotherapy into the realm of ALK-positive lung cancer, because as you all know, we sort of send a very hard message, like we don't love to use the existing PD-1, PD-L1, CTLA-4 drugs like nivolumab, ipilimumab, pembrolizumab for patients with ALK, except in very specific contexts. And so I think we'll see these trials are going to be supported by the company that makes ivonescimab. There are other companies like BioNTech has a drug that is also a VEGF, in this case PD-L1 targeting agent that is moving rapidly through the clinical realm. So we'll see how that pans out. And there's some nuances that's different, targeting PD-1 versus targeting PD-L1. But I think it's a target that is keep it on your radar, because we'll see a lot of movement in this field, and not just from the ivonescimab drug, but from other drugs that are coming. And I think that the BioNTech is BNT327, if I'm remembering the number correctly. Okay. And the trials right now are not, there's a question about high PD-L1. It's for all PD-L1 comers, and then they're looking backwards to see, does PD-L1 level matter? Based on my current practice, how long before combination therapy? So this is from Suzanne. Hi, Suzanne. How long do you think it will be before combination therapies come into the norm for ALK? and it will most likely be for the newly diagnosed only. No. So to me, it is actually quite amazing that for a system as complicated as cancer, that we can use one drug only and it can actually work so profoundly. I think combinations are really where we should be at for pretty much every other disease state, whether you're talking about diabetes or tuberculosis or HIV, we're using combinations because you want to, you know, attack it from as many angles as possible. How those combinations come into ALK positive, probably in the future, if I'm forecasting 5 years ahead, it will be combinations like ALK drug plus chemo or ALK drug plus IVO, or maybe an antibody drug conjugate based on some emerging data. But I think combinations at any line of therapy, if the patient is able to take the combination, because combinations always come with more toxicity because you're getting more drug, is where the field in general is going to go. Next question is, Jim, why do you think cancer in general has not been cured? What are the blind spots researchers and doctors are missing? Well, Jim, great question. So much to say here. We always need outside the box thinking, for sure, for sure, for sure. I would say I am looking forward. I think in our world, what we're going to see a lot of, and this is not specific to ALK or lung cancer, is the intersection between health and wellness and development of cancer. By that, I mean, things like exercise and cancer risk and microbiome and cancer risk and weight and cancer risk. Right now, the second most causative risk factor for cancer is weight and obesity after tobacco. And so, I think that if we think about like paradigm challenging or practice changing or things that have really shaken up the cancer research world, those don't come too often, but they do. In our lifetimes, we had one of those, which was the implementation of the PD-1, PD-L1, the immune checkpoint inhibitors. That was outside the box thinking. It was based on decades worth of science. These don't come overnight, but I think that's exactly why we also need to keep our workforce, because you never know who it's going to be who comes up with this paradigm shift, who's thinking outside the box, who sees the problem differently. And so I would, say, for sure, we all have our blind spots. We're all humans. We need to think out of the box, and we need to keep people who are smart and brilliant and invested in cancer research in the cancer research world. Alice asks, what are your thoughts on consolidation therapy? The Breakthrough Cancer study will have a consolidation trial. I use consolidation in my practice. It's always in partnership with one of the amazing radiation oncologists that I work with. This is a team effort, as is all of lung cancer care. It is not a solo man or woman act. So it is a discussion between the patient, myself, the medical oncologist, and the radiation oncologist. When is the right time? What can be consolidated? What are the risks to the patient? Because radiation does carry some risks. But yes, I do like consolidation therapy. But there is not a one-size-fits-all approach to this yet, nor is there actually a framework to say this is when you should get consolidation. There are a few trials that would suggest, between 3 to 6 months, but not as far as out of a year. A field very much in flux right now. Next question, Stephanie. Hi, Stephanie. I'd love to hear your thoughts on early stage adjuvant therapy. I've been on alectinib 3.5 years now, stage 2B. Hi, thanks for the question, Stephanie. I'm going to reframe this as, I'm not sure exactly hear your thoughts on early stage adjuvant therapy. I think it's great that we have an approved ALK drug for early stage disease. We need to find early stage ALK more. And so what I would say that I would love to see is more opportunities for screening and early detection for patients who are not currently meeting guideline for eligibility criteria for low-dose CT screening. Right now, there's a pretty narrow window of people who are eligible for low-dose screening, but the way that we're going to find people in the future, I very much hope is different. That's a huge area of very active research, as well as, What are the causative factors other than tobacco? How do we screen patients? How do we capture lung cancer early? I will tell you in my own practice, especially because right now I have a practice at Maine Vanderbilt campus, and I also have a practice at the VA. The VA is a very, very different veterans hospital, very, very different demographic of patients because they're so good at screening at the VA, much better than anywhere else. You can already see a shift in the disease, in the stage of disease. More patients diagnosed with early stage lung cancer and even early stage small cell, which is unbelievable. So I'm hopeful for early detection for people not currently screen eligible, so we can actually get them the TKI if they need it. Jeffrey asks, and I'm good on time. I recognize that we're coming up on the hour. I'd love to get through as many of these questions as possible. If you have to jump off, please feel free. But I want to, out of respect for the wonderful questions, make sure we respond to all of them. Okay. Explain the difference between EML4, ALK, variants 1, 2, and 3. All right. I love this question. So ALK is a gene, which makes a protein, and ALK stands for anaplastic lymphoma kinase. ALK sits on your chromosome 2, and specifically on chromosome 2p. And so your chromosomes look like little X's, and there is an X and a Y, but the chromosomes look like tiny little X's, and there's a little part called the P and a longer part called the Q. And ALK is on chromosome 2p. What happens in ALK-positive lung cancer is, let's say chromosome 2p is normally like this, the way my hands are. What happens for EML4 ALK is chromosome 2p, which is normally like this, flips like this. It's supposed to be like this. In the fusion, it flips over. And when it flips over, it puts two genes next to each other that are not supposed to be next to each other. And the two genes that it puts next to each other are EML4 and ALK. Now, how do you get the variance? The variance is where it flips, the break point where it flips, how much of EML4 ALK, how much of EML4 is in the flip is what the variant is. That's all. That does actually confer some interesting different biology because EML4 ALK variant 1 is not exactly the same as EML4 ALK variant 2, it's not exactly the same as EML4 ALK variant 3, but it's really just where does that chromosome 2p break and flip, and that's how you get EML4 ALK variant 1, 2, or 3. Okay, Jeff. Hi, Jeff. What does a patient do after chemo and lorlatinib these days? Clinical trial, clinical trial, clinical trial, clinical trial, clinical trial, clinical trial. What if you don't have access to a clinical trial? Then we have to start getting creative. The standard of care would start being things like docetaxel plus ramucirumab, or you can test for HER2 expression on the tumor, and if HER2 is 3+ high, there's a drug we call trastuzumab deruxtecan or TDXT that is an antibody drug conjugate against HER2. So that could be an option if the tumor has the right biomarker or if the tumor is MET 3+ high by MET immunohistochemistry, a MET protein marker. You could use a drug called telisotuzumab vedotin, which is another antibody drug conjugate against MET. So these are kind of special delivery chemos based on protein biomarkers on the tumor. But when we're talking about after chemo and after lorlatinib, this is an area of need that we really, this is where a lot of the trials are focused right now. Okay. Cindy asks, why not biopsy tumor after progression? We can and we do. The context that I was talking about is at the time of best response where the tumor has shrunk, but you still see something on a scan before the tumor has started to grow back and progress. The knowledge gap where we're missing information is the tumor has shrunk, but we still see something and we don't know what's going on at that point in time. That's what we call MRD. An MRD, in the world of hematologic malignancies, means minimal residual disease or molecular residual disease. This concept sort of carries over to solid tumor, but we're still trying to figure that out and build a framework for it. Pam, thank you for offering to give a sample. That's very kind of you. Ellen, what are your thoughts on the gilteritinib trial at this time? So I think the gilteritinib trial is based on a lot of great science that comes out from Sophia's lab. If you have access in Michigan, I think they have put an immense amount of time and thought into this study, and they wouldn't have been able to expand the study if the initial results did not look promising. So I think that's a reasonable option, and excited to continue to see that move that forward. Okay, Cindy says, if on a TKI and chemo, if side effects are getting too severe, can either dose be reduced or time go from 21 to 28 days? Absolutely. And so this is why we see patients so often in clinic to monitor, right? Especially when you're getting chemo, it's dosed every 3 weeks, and chemo's dosed every 3 weeks, not randomly. Not every chemo is dosed every 3 weeks, but the chemo we give for lung cancer, the carboplatin, pemetrexed, also called ALKtALK, is dosed every 3 weeks because you get it. I mean, and chemo is controlled poison, and I will say, I really dislike when you hear chemo-free regimen. Chemo is a foundation for all cancer care. And why? Because it works really well in certain contexts and in certain cancers. And like testicular cancer, chemo cures testicular cancer. And so I don't want to in any way, the way I speak about any therapy is never to speak negatively, because it's a tool that we have in our toolbox and we use it when we need it. And so chemo and carboplatin and ALKtALK are dosed every 3 weeks because you get it, your blood counts go down and then they come up, and then we dose it again. Your blood counts go down and they go up and we dose it again. It can be, if you need time to recover, we can push it out or we can dose reduce. And that's what the dialogue we have with our patients. Jeff asked, what about clusterin? So that is a target that the company called Immunity Bio has taken a drug that was in phase 2 clinical trials. So kind of the second wave of clinical trials. I don't really have an update on that right now. Stay tuned, as the company is working on multiple different drugs in lung cancer right now. Kang asked, can you share any advancement in AI for ALK using big data? For example, MRD predictions for various ALK-positive patients. Yeah, I mean, huge. I mean, AI is like the answer to every question right now, right? Like, yeah, it's transforming our world in front of our eyes. But here's the thing, as you all know, AI is only as good as the data that it receives. And so in order to answer questions specific about, for example, ALK, we need ALK data. And so where I think that from my perspective, I'm not an AI expert, but where we'll see, ALK specific data being deployed the best is with these big genotyping companies, like the big NGS companies that have a lot of data, a lot of samples, and they can compare, if they have 500 ALK samples, they can compare 500 ALK samples to 5,000 other lung cancers. Like, what's the same, what's different, and how do we aggregate not just the NGS, the DNA data, but some of the clinical data as well. So I am also very excited for AI to help with radiology, because I will tell you, one of my biggest moments, and I could use some colorful words and I won't, is I wish that when I had scan results for my patients, that result compared every single scan they ever had in their lifetime. Not just today's scan versus 3 months ago, but today's scan versus 3 months ago versus 3 years ago. I want all that data. And I want it aggregated in a little table with a little bow on it. Like, I want to see all of that data because it's meaningful over time. Like 2 time points 3 months apart is okay, but I'd rather see the trajectory of the tumor, like from start to where I am now, whether that's 3 months or a year or 3 years. I want the whole picture comparison. And I think that AI will be able to continue to help us to do that in a way that's going to refine our ability to interpret scans. Okay, let's see. Vicella says, and if I miss any, I'm really sorry. Put it back in the chat if you can. Is there a firm agreement about the order of TKIs after progression, second gen, third gen, fourth gen? Any possibility to reconsider the timing of moving to a more advanced, higher generation TKI before progression has occurred so that a mutation could be prevented? Yeah, so this is a debate, I think, that happened a lot in our community. So the idea is like, can you sequence the different drugs and what are the pros and cons in that? I will tell you my stance on this, especially with the Crown data that came out over a year ago now. It was June of 2024 when it was presented at ASCO and published in the Journal of Clinical Oncology, which is one of our preeminent oncology journals. It's hard for me to make a justify in today, not a year ago, not to before that 5-year data. Like, why would I not give lorlatinib? It has to be a toxicity issue because, 5 years and you still haven't reached a median, a middle is really profound. And not just that, but the ability of lorlatinib to both treat the brain if there is disease in the brain and prevent it from going there. It is if there's not. And so with the spirit of, hey, start with your best foot forward and give your strongest shot on goal, my choice for first line, unless there's a strong reason, a contraindication to lorlatinib, is first line lorlatinib. Going back to a second line drug, like if you're on lorlatinib for several years, I personally would not favor going back to a second generation drug after that. But I want to acknowledge right now, I'm speaking in broad strokes. Every patient is different. Every situation is different. So do not take what I'm saying right now as gospel, as Bible. I think I'm speaking broad strokes and generalizations, but every case is different. And that's why you need to discuss it with your doctor and your care team, because kind of when you hear these voices on the ALKtALK, which is amazing, we can only say in general, this is what we think, but everyone is different. And the human interaction that you have can never be replaced by a seminar. Okay. What is the driver for ALK to metastasize to the brain? Leslie. Yeah. So lung cancer loves to go to the brain. About a third of patients have brain metastasis at diagnosis, and that just continues to increase over time the longer patients are living with lung cancer. What specific molecular features of the tumor make it like to go to the brain? We don't know. That would be amazing. And wouldn't it be amazing, for example, if we had some test, let's say a patient didn't have brain metastases at diagnosis, and we could tell something on their sequencing, okay, you're at higher risk for brain mets than normal, and we need to, treat you differently somehow. I think things like that may come down the pipeline sometime, not anytime soon, but that, site of disease prediction may be something that some of the genomic data can tell us. Okay, well,
Oh my goodness, you're whipping right through these. It is amazing. Thank you.
Okay.
And we can
Okay.
wrap it up because they'll just keep coming. I don't know if you want to do any more. It's almost 8:15 though, and we want to be respectful of your time.
Okay.
What a treat this has been for everybody. It's so great.
Okay, I'm gonna heart some of these.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Okay, Melanie, thank you for your question. Really hard for me to say if it was the right option for you to switch from alectinib to lorlatinib without more context. Sorry, I can't be more specific on your question, but I appreciate the question and thank you for sharing it. Carol asks about Dr. Patrick. Yes, so Dr. Patrick owns the company that is owns the clusterin drug right now and many other drugs that are moving forward in lung cancer. He has a strong interest in particularly the immunologic system and even more specifically natural killer cells or NK cells to engage the immune system to fight cancer. I would say stay tuned. Maybe that would be, and maybe, Dr. Patrick and his team could come and give an ALK talk sometime because they have a lot going on.
I have a question for you though.
Yeah.
when do you get a second opinion? If you're a patient, how would you advise a patient when and what to ask and where to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really a personal decision. I would say first and foremost, never feel bad about getting a second opinion. And maybe a second opinion is not the best phrasing. I wish I had a better word. It's like, we all phone a friend sometimes, right? Like, hey, I just want someone else's thoughts. And that's fine. It's never offensive to another doctor. If it is, then maybe you don't want that person to be your doctor. This is a team sport. This is a time where, and you probably all heard, we have these things called tumor boards where we present cases and we get lots of opinions from our colleagues. And so, your life is on the line, and having additional thoughts, it, I think, is fine, good, welcome. I think the question is, when do you do that, and what are the expectations for what that
Yeah.
relationship is going to look like? And it can look a lot of different ways, right? What I think is very important to think about if you're thinking about a second opinion is, first, everyone needs a quarterback. Today is Sunday, whether you like football or not. A large population, including my mom and dad, who love sports, are watching football today. And I'm going to make this analogy. Every patient needs a quarterback for their team. And if you have a lot of different doctors in a lot of different places, sometimes it's unclear who's the quarterback. But that quarterback is really, really, really important, because your quarterback doctor is going to be the one that's advocating for you across the team, right? You want a strong leader. You want a strong quarterback for you and your quarter to be like, hey, this is what we need to do, and this is how we're going to pivot, and I'm going to shepherd the flock. And I have seen this sometimes where people have multiple different physicians and it's unclear who's quarterbacking for this team. So think about that. Who's your quarterback? Number one. Number two, as you're engaging a second opinion, what are your expectations for what that's going to look like? And here's often what happens is, hey, I'll see my second opinion doctor when I have scans and something's gone wrong. I would say that's okay, but maybe not ideal, because when something happens, there's an urgency, right? And if you've had scans somewhere else and then you have to get those scans sent to another site and then they have to review them, that's time. The clock is ticking, right? That's a time of anxiety and frustration for people. And so, think about, hey, if I have scans and it shows progression, maybe you want to like have an appointment with your other doctor around the same time you're going to get scans and make sure that the information is being transmitted to them. I wish I could tell you all how difficult it is to actually send records and scans from site to site. It's ridiculous. But it is. It's not as, hey, I call up and say, hey, fax me over this record and it comes, or send me over this scan and it comes. Sometimes it's immediate and sometimes it's a week or more. Nobody has that time when you've had progression and you're like, I got to make a plan and we got to move, right? And so I think thinking about, if I am seeing multiple providers, what are my expectations for what the different people are going to do? And if there is an issue, how are we going to deal with that in the most facile way? And the rate limiting steps are getting appointments and making sure that when you have an appointment, that the person you're seeing has the information that they need.
Such great points. That's huge. Yeah. I try to, except I get lazy, but make it a point to get my film, because you don't ever know when that disc is going to show, an area of concern that you need to make a move. But again, I'm lazy with that, but that's a great reminder that we need to help you help us. So thank you so much, Dr. Lovely. Do you see something?
Yes, there are so many questions. Some of them are just saying thank you, no, please. It's absolutely my pleasure to answer questions. it's a joy. We're like, yeah, we could answer questions all night
I
long.
know. We will have to have you back again. And just
Yeah.
as you're shipping out to Cali, we will still have Dr. Lovely on our advisory board and as a second opinion physician, and then back to Summit again, hopefully, if you'll accept. So
Let us just end with a message of hope. So I have this phrase that I love, which is hope, have only positive expectations. And I think, okay, please everyone know, like I'm a doctor and I'm a scientist and I have devoted my life to this. But I think putting good energy out into the world, it comes back to you. And so I leave you all with a message of hope. Yes, there are challenges that we all have around us right now. But I think things like this, where we have community with each other, are so incredibly powerful in so many ways. So hang on to that. Hang on to the things you love, because I'm also a big, huge believer in the power of joy in your life. And that, medicine is things like I loved at the ALK Summit where the lady from Mass General said, exercise is medicine. Totally. you know, totally. And it doesn't have to be, I'm going to go do a triathlon, like walking, take your friend on a walk, take your dog on a walk, and find the things in your life that bring you joy. And I think that is medicine for us all. And cultivate those things and hang on to them tightly.
thank you what a way to go out. So thank you so much. We stand right there with you. We wish you the very best. Thank you for your leadership, for your sacrifices, for your endless dedication to our community. And if you would all like to unmute and thank Dr. Lovely as well, and we'll see you in a few weeks. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Lovely.
Thank you very
you so
much.
much.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Good night. Good night.